All right, homework DA21. We are going to graph an equation in slope-intercept form, and they're going to give you 3 different versions of this problem. Slope-intercept form looks like this. Y equals mx plus b. The number in front of the x is the slope of the line. So if you think about slope, that's the slant of the line. The bigger the number, the higher or steeper the slant is. If it's positive, the slope goes up as you go from left to right. If it's negative, it goes down as you go from left to right. We'll talk about slope a little bit more, but that way you'll kind of understand when you graph what's going on. The end number is your Y-intercept. Y-intercept is where your graph is going to touch the y-axis. So our first equations aren't going to have a y-intercept. Well, they are. It's going to be 0 because it's not going to have a number on the end. Just having you kind of learn about slope. So when I graph a line, what I'm doing is making that table like we did before, and we're going to plug some numbers in for x and find the corresponding answers. Now when you pick numbers, you can pick whatever numbers you want, but you want to be able to end up on your graph. So you don't want to use too big of numbers. I like to use numbers like 0, 1, and 2 just because they're nice and easy to do. But you can pick -2 if you want, whatever you want to pick. And so then I'm going to substitute them in on the right side of my equation and solve. So the first one says I'm going to take 4 times 0. 4 times 0 is 0, right? If I do my second point, I'm going to do 4 times 1. 4 times 1 is 4. For my third point, I pick 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So they're going to have you plot those 3 points. 0, 0, right in the middle. Because there wasn't a number on the end, my y-intercept is at 0. Then I'm going to have 1, 4. 1, 4 up here. Then I'm going to go 2, 8 up here. So I can connect those dots and draw my line. And as you go from left to right, connecting your dots, if I could draw straight, boy, I'm drawing really crooked, my line is going uphill. And because I had a 4 in front, that was a pretty steep slope, right? It had a pretty big slant because 4 is kind of a big number in front of our x. So, if I look at the next one, the next one they threw a fraction in on me.
21.
21.
Yeah, we got it yesterday.
Oh, we got it yesterday?
You might have grabbed it yesterday. It was on the counter yesterday.
I grabbed it. You should have grabbed it. Yeah, I grabbed it.
Now, when I have fractions, I want to use a little more common sense when I pick my numbers because I don't want to have to try to plot a 1/3 or something weird like that. So 0 is always a good number to use. And any multiples of the denominator. So if I think about multiples of 3, I might use 3, I might use 6, I might use -3. You only really have to do 2 points to draw a line. They recommend you do at least 3. You can really do as many as you want to. But I'm, for fun, going to do 4 on this one. So I'm going to start out and do 2/3 times 0. Well, we know anything times 0 is going to give me 0, right? Then I'm going to do 2/3 times 3. 2/3 times 3, well, the 3's will cancel out, so I'm just going to get 2, right? Right, this is 3 over 1.
Okay.
And so I get 2 over 1, which is 2. 2/3 times 6, which I could put as 6 over 1. 3 goes into 6 2 times. 2 times 2 is going to give me 4. If I take that 2/3 times my -3, 3 goes into 3 1 time, but that's a -1. 2 times -1 would give me -2. So, plotting those points. Again, when I use 0, I got 0, 0. My y-intercept was 0 because there's no plus nothing on the end. 3, 2. Over 3, up 2. 6, 4. Over 6, up 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 3, negative 2. 3 to the left and down 2. Notice when I put all those dots on there, they lined up in a straight line. My slope was positive. It is going uphill as I went from left to right, but it's not as steep as a 4 slope, right? Because 2/3 is less than 4. So my line looks something sort of like that. So the third one, we're graphing y equals negative x. People have trouble when they have that negative x. So you want to think of negative x as negative 1x, right? Negative 1 times whatever I put in for my x values. So go ahead and pick some numbers to put in for x for me.
0.
0. Always like 0. What else shall we use? 3, okay. One more. 5, okay.
So would them all be negative, right?
They will-
Negative 3, negative 5.
So, negative 1 times 0 is 0. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. Exactly. So 0, 0. I'm going to plot that one. Then I'm going to go 3, negative 3. So 3 to the right and down 3. And then I'm going to do 5, negative 5. This time, notice when you connect your dots, you're going downhill as you go from left to right because your slope is a negative number instead of a positive number. So if you have a positive number in front of your x, it's going to go up. If you get a negative in front of your x, it's going to go down. All right, so now they're going to have it all the way in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. This is your slope. This is your y-intercept. My y-intercept is the value I get when I put x is equal to 0. That's why we always like to pick 0 anyway. If x is equal to 0 and I plug it into my expression, negative 2 times 0 minus 3, what happens? You get 0 for negative 2 times 0, and so you just get that number on the end. So that number on the end ends up being your y-intercept. When you plot the point 0, negative 3, means you're going over 0 but down 3, and you end up touching that y-axis right on that number, negative 3. Then we're just going to pick a couple other numbers so we can get some more points to draw our line. What number might we want to use? Something nice and easy. 1 sounds good. So then we're going to put our 1 in there. Negative 2 times 1 minus 3. If I solve that, I'm going to get negative 5, because I have negative 2 minus 3, which is negative 5. So if I plot that one, 1 over, down 5. And just to make sure my line's going straight, I'm going to pick another number. Pick another number to put in for x. 2. So I'm going to take negative 2 times 2 minus 3. And if I solve that, I'm going to get negative 7. Negative 4 minus 3 is negative 7. So I'm going to go over 2, down 7. When I connect my dots, because my slope was negative, I'm going to go downhill as I go from left to right, which I do. So number 5, when I graph my line 3x minus 7, first I'm going to find my y-intercept. If I put 0 in for x, my y-intercept is going to be at negative 7. Whatever that n number is, that's what we should get. -7 is my y-intercept. 0 over down 7 lands right on my y line. Got to pick a few more points to work with. What should we put in for x?
2.
2, okay? So, 3 times 2 minus 7 would give me,
1.
not 1, but
Negative.
-1. So, 2 over down 1 is going to be a dot on my graph. What else might we want to put in for x? 3, okay? So 2 times 3, or 2, 3 times 3. How about I write there, I think? 3 times 3 minus 7,
9 minus 7 would be 2.
which is 2. So I'm going to go over 3 and up 2, right? So again, all those dots should line up. Because my slope is positive, I'm going uphill as I connect my dots from left to right. Just to double check and make sure everything looks like it's doing the right thing. So my y-intercept was -7. We're going up as you go. So there's another one with that -x. Again, if you have trouble with that -x, write it as -1x plus 4. Means the same thing. Finding our y-intercept, I'm going to put 0 in for x. What is my y-intercept going to be?
4.
+4. So I know it's going to touch the y-axis right on 4. 0 over up 4. Picking a couple other numbers. What should we put in for x? 4. Okay, if I put 4 in for x, I'm going to have -1 times 4 plus 4, which would give me an answer of 0. Right? -4 plus 4 is 0. So over 4 up 0 happens to be our x-intercept, which we don't have a special rule for other than that you get a 0 for y. And one more point just to make sure our line goes the right way. What number might we want to put in for x?
2.
2. 2 is always good. So -1 times 2 plus 4 would give me an answer of 2. -2 plus 4 is a +2. So over 2 and up 2. This time my slope was negative, so when I connect my dots, I'm going downhill as I go. And the third way they're going to do it now is where you've got both the fraction and the y-intercept in there. So we're still going to find our y-intercept first because we like to do that one. If I put 0 in for x, I'm going to get
You're going to get 6.
I'm going to get the 6 on the end. I always get that end number. That's why they called that the y-intercept in slope-intercept form. So 0, 6. 0 over up 6 is going to be straight up there on my y-axis at 6. Now, when I'm picking my numbers for x, we said because we have that fraction, we want to pick multiples of the denominator. What might I pick for x? 3 would be a good choice because there's a 3 in the denominator. -1/3 times 3 over 1 plus 6. So the 3's cancel. -1 plus 6 is 5, right? So 3 over up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's another number I might want to put in for x? 6 would be a good choice. So -1/3 times 6 over 1 plus 6. 3 goes into 6 2 times. 2 times -1 is -2. -2 plus 6 gives us 4. So 6 over 4 up. 6 over 1, 2, 3, 4 up. So when I draw my line, because my slope was negative, I should be going downhill, and I do, because my slope was negative 1/3. So, now I want to graph the line y equals 3/4 x plus 1. If I find my y-intercept, what is my y-intercept going to be?
+1.
Plus 1, so just a 1. If x is 0, gets rid of the x, I get the plus 1 on the end. So right there, 0 over up 1, or on my y line at 1. What's the next number I might want to put in for x?
8.
8 sounds good. So 3/4 times 8 over 1 plus 1. What kind of answer am I going to get? 7. 4 goes into 8. 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 plus 1 is 7. So over 8, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We probably don't want to pick a bigger number than 8 because we wouldn't fit on our graph. But what's another good number we could pick? 4 would be a great number to pick. 3/4 times 4 over 1 plus 1 would give me 4. 3 plus 1 is 4. So when we put 4 in for x, we got 4 for y. Over 4 and up 4. Now we can connect our dots and draw our line. And again, our slope was positive, and that's why it's going uphill as we go from left to right. So, graphing y equals 3/2 x minus 2, finding my y-intercept. My y-intercept is at
-2.
-2. Picking some numbers to put in for x. What would be a good choice for x? 2 sounds great. 3/2 times 2 minus 2 gives me 1. 3 minus 2 is 1. So over 2, up 1.
4.
Sarah, she's just moving right along. 3/2 times 4 minus 2. So if I do that, I'm going to get 4. Hey, I got 4, 4 again. Over 4 and up 4. Again, when I connect my dots and draw my line, my slope is positive. I should be going uphill as I go from left to right. If I could draw straight, then it would be my line. Now, the next ones tell us we're going to graph vertical or horizontal lines. Sometimes we have an equation that just says x equals a number or y equals a number. It doesn't have both the x and the y in it. It's going to be, that's not spelled right, it's going to be vertical if you have x equals your number. It's going to go horizontal if you have y equals your number. So this tells me to graph the line y equals 8. What that's telling me is if I were to write a whole bunch of ordered pairs, every one of the y values in my ordered pairs would have to always be 8.
That y would be vertical? Or
No,
horizontal?
horizontal for the y.
And x is
X goes vertical.
vertical.
We'll find out why in a minute. If y always has to be 8, x can be whatever I want it to be. It might be 0, it might be 2, it might be -3. Whatever I want to pick. Now what happens when I plot those points? 0 over up 8 touches my y-axis right at 8, right? Y equals 8. 2 over up 8 would be right there. Negative 3 up 8 would be right there. Anything that has a y value that's equal to 8 is going to be horizontal from the y-axis at 8. So my line goes this way straight across my graph. So same kind of thing if I have x equals 5. If I were going to make a table with my ordered pairs, it's telling me that every single x value has to be 5. My y values can be whatever we want. I like 0. Maybe I want to use negative 5 and 3 this time. Hey. So 5, 0 means I'm going to go over 5, up 0. I'm going to touch the x-axis right at 5. The x line right at 5. 5, negative 5 means I go over 5 and down 5. Be right down there straight underneath that other one. 5, 3 means I go over 5 and up 3. So notice all my dots line up in a vertical line straight above each other. So when I connect my dots, there's my line. Now, because I'm lazy and I know what's going to happen, I look at my equation and I say this. Oh, x equals negative 2. Which way does my line have to go? Vertical. Then I look at my graph. X is this line, equals negative 2 would be right here. Since I know my line has to go vertical, I just say, oh, I'm going to click here and I'm going to click here, randomly up, straight up and down, instead of making a big long table. And I have my line. So that's the shortcut if you know what you're supposed to get, a vertical or a horizontal line. If you don't know, then make the table, fill out some points and plot them, and you'll find out which way it ends up going. The last 3 on this page, more graphing, only these ones are pretty easy to graph. They want you to understand the term x-intercept and y-intercept. X-intercept is where it touches the x-axis, y-intercept where it touches the y-axis. So, graph the line whose x-intercept is 8. On my x line, I'm going to mark right where 8 is. There's my x-intercept. And whose y-intercept is negative 5. So on my y line, I'm going to go down to negative 5. Now normally we like to have more than 2 dots, but you only need 2 dots to draw a line, so we can just connect those 2 dots. If I could draw straight, I'd have my line. So number 14 says graph the line whose x-intercept is 2 and y-intercept is 2. They use the same number. So on my x-axis I'm going to go to 2. On my y-axis I'm going to go to 2. And then I can connect my dots and draw my line. I don't know why they didn't do this one first. It's the easiest one. So on this one, my x-intercept is at 5. My y-intercept is at negative 2. Do be careful on Alex. Sometimes they switch them around and give you the y first and the x second. You know, you get used to always doing the same one first. And sometimes they're tricky and they switch them on you. See if you're reading. But once I have my 2 points on there, I can draw my line. All right, those are the next 5 things on your pie chart. Easy enough, right?
Mm-hmm.